Hello, house guests. Welcome to House of Chatter, Haunted House Calls. Today, we are going to be looking at psychics. And for the purpose of this episode, we are going to be looking at the fortune teller or the future telling part of psychics, including calling for advice and possible remote viewing in a way that kind of tells the future. So you'll understand when I explain this, okay? So for this purpose, the meaning of psychic or fortune teller is someone with a higher extrasensory ability that serves as an intermediary to communicate with spirits and entities from the non-physical world. So it may be confusing when it says communicate with spirits or those from a non-physical world, because when you think of psychic, you think of crystal ball and someone's looking in it. But actually, from my experience with psychics, and including my niece, who is also an intermediary or energy reader, is they communicate with their spirit guides, and their spirit guides tells them the future, not directly like, hey, on Monday, January 7th, the sky is going to be blue, it's going to be 50 degrees, and you're going to arrive at work at 9:05 p.m. It's not like that with the spirit guides. It's more of clues, and from what I've experienced, visions of the future. So I can explain this. So me and my girlfriend, we planned a paranormal staycation. So we basically went on vacation to search for or participate in paranormal things, ghost hunting, haunted tours. And then at the end, we'd always do an escape room, right? And the theme would be haunted or whatever, go with the theme of our staycation. So as part of our staycation, other than the haunted thing, was to talk to psychic. So a group of us got to this psychic office that opened just for us. So I think it was 4 of us that opted to do it. It was very loud in the office, so it was very hard to hear, but this is the gist of it. Basically, my girlfriends who said that got their readings, their futures or their predictions never came true, and what they were talking about was way off base. But with me, my psychic was right on base, including the month and including finances. So check this out. It was offered that she could tell my future 2 years in advance. At that time, I was a widow and a single mom with 3 boys. I worked in healthcare. I just got off of bereavement leave. We live in a rural area, and we have traveling healthcare practitioners come in all the time to fill in the gaps. So that is a little bit of my background going into this. So she starts off a little bit of maybe not reading me, but she said I had 3 boys. One was a teenager. Well, the oldest was 12, so not quite a teenager, but a preteen, and then other babies, and at the time I think my children were, 3 and 5, or 4 and 6, at that time. And my dad, was living with us too, helping out. So that's why I was able to do the staycation. So anyway, she was able to tell me my future. So she started with December, and this is November. So she started with December, and she said that I was going to meet my future husband. And of course, it's kind of cliche, and you're like, ah, ha, ha, ha. So she says, you've already met him. I'm like, okay. And she says, he works with you. I was like, okay, yeah. So then she goes on to say that I meet my future husband in December, that I am going to marry him in April. She says that I was going to go through IVF, but it was going to be very hard on my body, and that I was going to take a pause because of my oldest son. She said that my oldest son was going to go through a lot of trouble, mental health wise, but not exactly mental health. So she's saying it wasn't like a mental health emergency, but it feels similar to that. And that I would be spending a lot of money on an attorney to help with my oldest son, and it would be the most hardest time of my life. And then she said we were going to move, and I was going to have a job that involves putting people in tubes that you can see through. Now, I'm a registered nurse, and she was very confused by this. At the time, I believe I was working in the OR, or the outpatient surgery unit, and I believe I was in the GI clinic doing colonoscopies. So I was thinking the human body and tube as intestine, and that you literally put a camera up through you. And I was like, no, like trying to explain it to her, and she's saying, no, you can see right through you, through this tube. Someone's lying down, and you can talk to them with a telephone. And at the time, I had no idea what she was talking about. She also said that at work, I was going to get an award. And then I was like, okay. And then she also said that I was going to go through the hardest time with my son, like I said before, and that we were going to be best friends after it. And I said, okay. She also said that, or alluded to, that I was going to have a secondary career other than being in healthcare. And at that time, and currently so, my side hustle has been succulents and fairy gardens. And I'll tell you my secret: fairy gardens as in fairy lights. So I basically create arrangements with succulents and other items, and I light them up. So basically I turn anything into a vase and I light it up. So if you guys are interested, I can show you some of my work later. But I had been really successful at that time in selling on Facebook marketplace, doing these arrangements. And, I think I was making like $100 a month just on flipping plants and thrifting stuff. So I thought I was going to be successful. And she was very confused, and she was like, so what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I sell succulents. And she's like, oh, okay. Now, this was kind of like out of order, the secondary job thing. But she said in January I was going to get another job. And then she also said in May I was going to get a large sum of money, but she couldn't describe where. So I said it was an inheritance. She said no. I said, is it real estate? She said no. I said, is it stocks and bonds? She said no. Insurance claims? She said no. Settlements? She said no. Lottery winnings? She said no. But she described the logo to me. And she said there's an arrow. And I didn't know what that meant. And I was like, okay. So, I believe that was the end of like the timeline in some of the months where it was really important. She was right on. I believe including like November, definitely in May about the money situation. So let me tell you what really happened. It is November, right? Get the psychic reading, come back, whatever, go back to work. And then in December, there's this really cute respiratory therapist, and I am calling him constantly because I am working on the COVID unit, and everybody decides to not want to breathe when I'm working. So I was calling him constantly. So he was coming over more and more to spend time on the unit because he knew I was going to be calling anyways. So we started talking and things progressed from December to January, and by February we were dating, and it was actually after my friends went on a paranormal ghost hunting tour at Winchester is where we actually was the day that we got together. And it was really weird because I'm super into numerology, and numerology means a lot to me. And he wanted to have a number that I could associate good things again, because I had a number where I associated bad things, and that was the number 7 used to be my lucky number. I guess it still is. But our number was going to be 2 for getting together on February 20th, 2022. Now, it does get confusing with him because he has confused their original boyfriend-girlfriend anniversary as 2 February 22nd, but it doesn't matter. The 2 is what he designated as our number. Ironically enough, that my friends actually sent me back photos from the Winchester Mystery House, and my friend was like, I didn't even take these pictures. I guess her phone had went off in a series of a burst, but in a photo you can see a hand, and it has the number 2 in it, and it's drawn like clearly. And she said she had no idea how she took this photo. It was my best friend and my other really good friend, and I know that they're sane people, and there's just no way that they could have doctored this photo or that they would pull a prank on me. I was supposed to go with them, so I'm glad that they found other people to go to, and I'm glad that they had that experience because now I can share it with you. But anyways, we get together in February. We do get married, I think a year and a half later. We do go through IVF. Ironically, we hadn't planned on doing it before, but we were so in love with each other that we decided to have, go for one more together, kind of us to complete our family. So we started IVF. At that time, my oldest was still grieving, and he was kind of wilding out a lot. And wasn't a great situation. So what ended up happening was I had our implant, like the last implant, and I was going to go to get prepped and all this other stuff, and then hopefully we were going to have a baby within a month or two. But I had to go to this appointment. If you don't go through this series and everything, then you have to start all over. And this was past the meds and everything. And we had to take a little bit of a break because I had too much fluid in my uterus and all this other stuff. But the break isn't what the psychic was talking about like you would think. And yes, it was very hard on my body. I was throwing up. I had fluid overload. It was miserable. My meds were warm, so we were freaking out about that. So going through all that, you want to make sure that you hit your appointment. So I'm trying to get to this appointment. I had to drop off my kid. Road is clear, and I live in a rural area. The road was completely clear, right? Drop off my kid, and someone hit a freaking deer right in the middle of the road. You could not go around or anything. And this person was freaking out. She's like, I gotta go to work, and then I can't go around this deer. And I'm like, well, do you have a towel or a blanket or something? I can help you move him. And we were just gonna kind of not touch it, but kind of swing and wrap a blanket over it and move it so we can move our cars or whatever. So basically, we're moving it, and she skedaddles right away just as we're completely almost done, right? But I still had a little bit more to do, and I was in a position not to be able to get done, right? So she basically left me, and that took, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes out of my drive. And I was already running a little bit behind. So if I had stopped for anything, I was never going to make this appointment. And by the time I got over this fiasco with the deer, I would have never made it. So I had to go home. I went home to my husband and I said, we're going to have to start all over because I missed my appointment. You missed this one. We have to do the whole series, meaning you get shots, everything. And he was very relieved, and I was very upset. And he basically said because we were having so much trouble with our oldest, it wouldn't be a good time. And he wanted to pause so that we could all basically get all of our stuff worked out. So we had to pause. My son did have to go and get a mental health evaluation in the hospital, but he was not as severe as it was brought on or thought, thankfully. I did have to hire an attorney for some advice on the whole situation, and it did cost me a large amount of money. We did end up moving partly because of it, because we wanted to go into a better environment with our children, or my children. And so we did. And I also wanted to be closer to my mom. So we moved. And then after that, my job was in a hyperbaric chamber. And a hyperbaric chamber is what divers use to prevent or to treat the bends, nitrogen sickness, basically. And so when you're in the hyperbaric chamber, as a normal person, you're hyper oxygenating your blood because you're getting more you're just surrounded with oxygen. So it's really good for wound healing. And I got a job at a wound care clinic. And the hyperbaric chamber is a clear tube, and you do talk to people on the telephone because that's how you communicate with them. So the psychic was right about that. And our office also got an award. She was also right about that. Now, the money. We have basically had come to the conclusion that this psychic was so right that at the time I was betting, I was a joke with my husband that we were betting money on it. When we got together, I told him the story from the start, and it was just absolutely insane. And he just stopped betting me because I was always winning in the predictions and what was coming true. So, especially with the move and everything like that. So, come May, we're expecting a big windfall because the psychic said it was a pretty large amount of money. And at the time, we were going through a series of financial hardships because we had a rental that just we had to fix up for our renters. And we had some ongoing problems, just pouring money into basically our rental, after a bad handyman job. So we were just strapped. And we were just waiting and waiting and waiting. And we get to the end of May. And we can't wait anymore. And we have another financial emergency. And we thought that we were going to have some extra cash from some unknown source. So I had to get a loan. And I got a loan online from an organization that their logo was an arrow pointing up, which is what the psychic described. And I did actually get a large sum of money. And she also, I do have to say, another thing that the psychic did mention at the time was I asked her if I was going to get remarried because I was a widow and my heart was crushed and I just wanted that fairy tale again. And she had said, yes, but you guys are going to break up and it's going to be a long breakup. But you're not going to get divorced. You're end up back together. And so guess what? At this time, we're currently broken up. No divorce papers yet. It's complicated. It's been a couple months, and every psychic I have talked to since this breakup has said that there is reconciliation in the cards, and some other things that I'm not going to mention now, but it's pretty much fairy tale ending type of thing. He's brokenhearted and wants to get back together and blah, blah, blah. So jury's out on that. I'll comment later. But basically, that is my psychic story. I will say I have used psychics what I've noticed psychics have done is in this instance, like a psychic looked at my hand, right? She also asked me my birth date. I don't think she had a crystal ball. I can't remember. But she definitely closed her eyes a lot and like she was seeing things. And also maybe hearing things as well. She also did mention a couple of things that I had asked that my children were actually experiencing. My children were actually experiencing maybe possible some paranormal activity on the negative side that was scaring them. And I had mentioned this to the psychic and I said, how do I get rid of it? And she had told me, I think she had told me to like salt and sage, but if they come back, I can come back to her. And I didn't sound like she was going to charge me like extra. It's just like, hey, just do this and whatever, and it shouldn't be a big deal. I did what she said when I got home, and it wasn't a big deal. At least I didn't hear anything from my children who were previously really disturbed. And I can tell you that a large part of my paranormal experiences now also involve my children. But anyways, so I also, so from what I've witnessed at fairs and whatever, my psychic she didn't use a crystal ball or whatever, or didn't use a crystal ball. Some psychics will use tarot cards in different decks to be able to talk to your spirit guides, and they'll be able to tell you your future, possibly past lives, things like that. And I can do another video on tarot specifically, but it's another way of telling the future. Some psychics use crystals because energy cannot be destroyed. It just kind of travels. And I've had holding crystals in my hands, and also with tarot cards as well. Like I said, my friends, their futures have never come true, but mine yearly have done. I'll give you another example. Like I said, my oldest was going through a troubled time, and I really wanted to know what was going on because I felt deep inside that there was just things weren't going peachy. And even though I got word that things were going peachy, I kind of felt like they weren't, and I was desperate to know. So I did call a psychic on the phone, and I did specifically ask about my son and how he was doing. She said that he was still doing his old ways, but he was fooling everybody, and it was an act. However, he does or is going through not like a mental illness, but something like it. And later, I found out the psychic was right, and it came from 2 sources confirming it. And his mental health was very depressed to the point where sometimes you got scared. And I think that's what the psychic was alluding to. So those are my stories about psychics. Let me know what you think. Like, subscribe, share. Please comment. And if you have any stories yourself, please email us. I'll put our email address in the comments, and you can email your stories. You will be completely anonymous. And yeah, so like, subscribe. Thanks, house guests, and thank you for tuning in to Haunted House Calls. We'll see you next time with some more stories. Thanks.